Hello everybody, Keith here again. Another repotting video, slightly different one again, which I hope is going to be of interest. This is my Maxillaria cucullata, which I got from Burnham's a couple of years ago. And last year it did really well. I was amazed with it. But this year it hasn't done as well. It only put 2 flowers up, and there were more new pseudo bulbs than that. And the older pseudo bulbs look really deflated, which I'm not sure is good either. So I want to have a look, see what's going off. These are growing with the root well outside. So I want to try, and you see that? See that the roots are well outside the thing. I'm not sure really showing any sign of going down. But this is a typical Maxillaria. You've got roots poking out of in all directions. If you look down into the middle here, well, if I can get the finger around, difficult. The camera not helping me, but if you can just see down there, we've got some roots, and they're poking up out of the top. Oh, there's a slightly better example. Out the top of the old sheaths. So all of that needs looking at and a bit of careful prodding and poking. I'm not convinced that it's been wet enough. I think these like it quite damp. It says on here, this is the label that came from Burnham's. You can see it says cool with a minimum of 10 degrees. Well, okay, we can do that upstairs, that's not a problem. It's focusing better, thank goodness. So I just think, given how the other one is being kept. It's just coming out of the bucket, having had a real good soak in this morning, as you can possibly hear. But given that one, this no tilioed lossum, which I showed in another video recently, the roots on that are long, they're going downwards, okay. But again, there's roots all over everywhere. But the older pseudo bulbs are staying well inflated. So it strikes me there's something very much not right with this one, and it's almost certainly, in my guesstimate, that it's not wet enough, or not damp enough at least, in this. It's just in bark. Now it was done, I haven't put a date on that, but it's been in this for about 2 years anyway, so it's going to be time to have a look. Oh well, there you are, you see. It has been reasonably happy in there. So, now what do I do with this to try and get this out without absolutely destroying it? But these roots are bone dry, absolutely bone dry. So the next thing I'm going to do is give it a really good soak in some water, because it doesn't appear that it's been getting enough, at least not lately. But things, depending on how these roots react, may not be as bad as I thought they were. Maybe it's simply that it hasn't been getting adequate watering or sufficiently frequent watering. And it may well be if I put some perlite in with the bark. It'll help it stay hydrated that little bit longer. But as it's going to be a little while, is it showing any signs of... They don't really seem to be greening up, do they? But they are easing a little bit, so let's see how much I can do without absolutely trashing things. There's quite a lot of roots that are coming off, and as you can see, I'm not particularly forcing it. I'm just squeezing this gently, trying to persuade the roots to let go of the bark. But there's an absolute mass of roots under here. So at some point this thing has been happy. Have I left it in this bark too long? That's entirely possible. Well, that's no good. There's some dead bulbs way down in here, so that's got to come off. There's a whole chunk there that I'm going to have to get off, and that'll be helping nothing at all, because they really don't look good. So why I've buried those so deep. Yeah, well, it's coming off quite well, and we have got a heck of a lot of root. As I say, I've no idea how good the roots are. They haven't greened up particularly, but I'm not prepared to go and start hacking yards of root off. I don't like doing that. Right, let's get to the base of this rhizome and take some of this off, because that there is dead as the proverbial doornail, and there's nothing remotely like a live root. We've got some rather unpleasant looking pseudobulbs off it, and I want to take it off. In fact, it's come off like that. I may take a little bit more off, but that's just come away from there, and that is going to let me plant this a bit deeper. I can start taking these sheaths off. Hope the roots then get the chance to do some good. I'll obviously use cinnamon on that cut. In fact, I'll do that now while I think about it, because my memory is like the old sieve. Right, so I'm going to keep just teasing my way through these roots. I'm not convinced they are brilliant. But I'm never keen on just banging away at roots. Now, some people will say, oh, you know, hang on, have we got... No, we have only got one rhizome. I can see which way it's going. There are quite a lot of new roots trying to come, but these sheaths, and they aren't easy to get at, it's got to be said, they're not easy to get at all. They're pushing them really in the wrong direction. So it's important that I get in here without damaging any more than I've got to, so that they've got a chance to come straight out from the base, or as near straight out from the base as we can manage. It's a very congested centre, as you can see, but I think that's the way it grows in the wild. It's a bit of a climber, but I think, you know, if we can get it so that the roots have got a chance to come out and go down, and we might stand a chance of getting somewhere with this again. Because I say, last year it was spectacularly successful, but we've got damaged a new growth, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a bit of a shame because it's climbing, so I'm going to have to put it in slightly sideways. I wondered whether I ought to try and put it into something that was a bit smaller or a bit wider or something like that. I'm not convinced. I'm really not convinced. So if I take that one off, this is going to come away, and that's not enough, I don't think. It's quite loose as it is. So I don't want to, you know, there's a new growth there. If I can get it going in two directions, that's so much the better. So I think what I'm going to do, because I've actually got most of that old bark out at that, I'm happy to say, I'm going to put it back in here to give it a chance to have a really good soak. Some packing beans in the bottom, I don't know whether that helped or not. I'm going to use bark, but I'm going to put some perlite in it in the hope that that's going to help it along a bit, but it's quite clearly that's needed a lot more water than I've been giving it. So that is something I've got to bear in mind, although as we move excuse me, as we move into winter, that's another issue altogether, of course. It can go back in that pot, I think. It doesn't grow that much bigger. It's been in there 2 years. It's come on, yes, but I don't think it's got that much bigger. So I want to try and get it going again. Get some bark. Excuse me for going off camera. Some nice new bark, 3 handfuls in that pot, and a handful of perlite as well. So I put it into that jug so I can mix it more easily. I've got a fairly good idea of how much I'm going to want. Very, very dusty. I'm going to be sneezing my head off if I'm not careful. So I am going to take that out again. It's difficult to say whether how many of these are viable, but I'm not going to start chopping things off. It's difficult to know. These are a very, very, very fine root. They do branch. So on the grounds that I don't know whether they're good, bad or indifferent, I'm going to leave well alone. As the old engineering saying goes, if in doubt, do not. Because you do not want to be... somebody once said to me, I forget which orchid it was, oh, you know, it's no problem, just slap some, you know, whack the roots off, it'll soon grow some more. Worst thing I ever do is listen to that. because it all but killed that plant. It just did not want to play at all after that. I don't like it, seemed to shock it, and that's it. Again, what I did wrong is anybody's guess. Now then, let's see. That's quite tight. That is quite tight. But I want to try and see how it goes. As I want to keep it a little moister than I have, what I don't want to do is have a pot so big that it stays wet, because the roots aren't getting to all parts of it, and that I've found, more than once, is a recipe for complete disaster. Sometimes you repot a plant and it just throws a tantrum, chucks its roots away, so the roots that you thought were going all the way through your bark and all the way through this pot, all of a sudden aren't. And that pot, which you were very, very confident was going to be drained and all the rest of it by all these roots that it had. Oh look son, it ain't going to do that anymore. It's not going to play your silly games. So it's really important that you don't overpot. I mean, I, as I've said a number of times before, I get very wary with plants, unless they're specifically a bog plant, and that's a different argument. And even some bog plants will do quite well on the land. We'll do both. We've got some irises in our pond, and we've also had them in the borders nearby. And it's not a natural pond, it's an artificial one, so there's a brick wall between the beds and the water. So it's not as if the soil underneath these irises is particularly moist or any more than any other part of the garden. And they've done absolutely fine, and they're simply plants that have broken off the ones in the pond. And what do I do with these? It'll live or die, chuck it in there and let's see what happens. And what happened was fine. These plants rooted and flowered and did very well. But as I say, that's probably a little bit low, but I have tried to have it so that the whole thing is the base of the pseudobulbs are all more near the surface, and those roots that it had that were above the surface, there are still some because you've got pseudobulbs in the middle, so quite what I want to do about those I honestly don't know at the moment. It's a difficult one, and I don't want to have bulbs buried too deep. Some plants will take it, some plants don't. This one seems to be more tolerant than some, but rather than hope for the best, I'm going to give that a good watering now, so that when I take it back to where it lives on one of the upstairs bedroom windowsills all year round, where the temperature is not that warm, not that cold, and it's got the chance to do its own thing. I mean, I'm quite pleased with this because I bought it as an experiment. As you know, I was, when I was at work, I was a research engineer. Spent most of my working life, I suppose, because I worked in several different industries, from power station boilers to the coal industry. What experimenting is quite a natural thing for me, but on the other hand, you've got to learn from it. So I think this, with a bit of luck, the bulbs are much more level. I've got a bit of a dip there, that's going to have to be watched, but all of it now is fairly near the surface. It shouldn't be, the pseudo bulbs shouldn't stay too wet too long. So that is a repot of Maxillaria cucullata. Just need to put a date on that and rinse my hands, and job's a good one. Thank you for watching. I hope that was interesting. It was interesting for me, and I'm doing it just to find out that the things underneath weren't as bad, or at least were not great, but certainly weren't as bad as I was expecting to see. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll try and see you fairly soon. Bye.